Hi, hello everyone. Welcome to the 10th webinar from Practo Connect. We are proud to do this webinar in collaboration with Academy of Family Physicians of India. This webinar topic is COVID vaccines, what every physician should know. So COVID, we have all been fighting the COVID pandemic for the last 1 year approximately. We were all waiting for the vaccine, direly waiting for the vaccine. The Indian vaccination project started on 16 Jan, so it's almost a month now. And we have learned a lot from the pandemic and from the vaccination process. So we had a lot of questions in our mind. How will the vaccine reach all the people? It's reaching the healthcare workers first, then the police, the army, the front lines, then the people above 50 and below 50 with comorbidities. So there were questions around the whole strategy of how the vaccination distribution is going to go on. And what have we learned from the pandemic and how will we take it forward? How will we take all the learnings forward? So to discuss this whole vaccine, COVID vaccine in India project, we have workers first, then the police, the army, the front lines, then the... So we have with us Dr. Raman. He's the president of the Academy of Family Physicians of India. Welcome, Dr. Raman. He's also the president of WONCA, the WONCA South Asia region. Also chief editor, Journal of Family Medicine and Primary Care. We have also with us Dr. Sunil Raina, who will be talking about the regulatory framework around the COVID vaccine distribution. Dr. Raina is the head of Department of Community Medicine at Kangra, Dr. RP Government Medical College, Tanda, Himachal Pradesh. He's also the project director for Bloomberg Initiative for TB and Lung Disease. Plus, he's got 250 articles published in international journals. We also have with us Dr. Arvind Kumar, who's at the faculty at AIIMS in the Department of Internal Medicine. And he's been there for 10 years now with 100 plus publications. Also, he's the chief of the employees COVID care at AIIMS. So welcome all of you, sir. First, I would like to invite Dr. Sunil Raina to speak on the regulatory framework for COVID vaccine in India. Please, Dr. Raina, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Nilesh, for inviting me to this prestigious conclave, primarily because of the fact that Association of Family Physicians of India is associated with it. Because I have been largely associated with the work that they are doing, and it's a pleasure to be on a platform that is being launched by Family Physicians of India in collaboration with the Practo Connect. So why this framework was needed, we will talk about that slight details. But the focus will be on why the framework was needed and how exactly does the framework work as far as COVID-19 vaccination is concerned. So why the regulation? Why did we need to regulate the vaccination, COVID-19 vaccination in India? What was the need for regulation of COVID-19 vaccination? If you look at the vaccines that are available with us at this point in time, primarily we have 4 vaccines around the world. Now, 2 of these vaccines, the Moderna and the Pfizer, has gone into the vaccine scramble with most of the Western world in the queue, first in the queue to take away the share of Moderna and the Pfizer vaccines. If you look at the vaccines available with them by 2029, all vaccines which are 2021, all vaccines which are to be produced by Moderna and Pfizer have already been sold out. And we are left with the vaccines that are being produced by India, the Covaxin or the Covishield. So supply is limited, and there are lots of people around who need this vaccine. So vaccination regulation will be needed, not just to take care of the fact that the vaccine should reach the unreached, and it should also reach those who are vulnerable, but also because of the fact that we need to assess that the vaccine has to have a risk-based approach, that the vaccine that is being rolled out, it has to take care of a risk-based approach. So what are the primary or fundamental principles on which this risk-based approach for vaccines is worked out? So beyond numbers, we also need to take care of this risk-based approach to see how vaccine will be rolled out. That's why regulation is needed. So what are the 3 basic elements for this risk-based approach? One is that the severity and the magnitude of the harm caused by the pandemic has to be worked out. Whether this pandemic is of such a great magnitude that it is going to cause immense catastrophic harm to mankind. If you compare it with the last one that we had, the H1N1 influenza pandemic that was around 9 and 10 and 11, So we didn't think that it was of such huge magnitude in India to cause a harm that the vaccine was needed to be rolled out in India, for example. The vaccines are there for other countries with regard to influenza. But in India, we didn't feel that it was of that big a magnitude that we needed a vaccine to roll out. Second is severity and magnitude of harm that would likely result if a vaccine is not made available. So one is that the harm caused by the pandemic. Second is if we don't have the vaccine in our hand, what will be the harm caused to the general public? The third is the likely impact of making a vaccine available to the public. So we have to take care of this risk benefit evaluation, whether by launching the vaccine, we are going to do more good than harm before we talk of rolling out the vaccine. So that's why regulation is required. Regulation is required to take care of this risk-based approach, as well as to take care of the numbers that are to be vaccinated whenever a pandemic starts rolling in. So countries need to put in place emergency approval and or fast track regulatory pathways for vaccine distribution and allocation. That's why precisely we need a regulatory framework in place to roll out these vaccines. So how does a framework look like? How does this regulatory framework for COVID-19 vaccine world over look like? So this diagram sums it up all. This is the perfect launch pad for talking about regulatory framework. So you have the allocation framework. Under the allocation framework, we have three big columns. And these columns is one is the goal. The goal is to reduce severe morbidity and mortality and negate societal impact due to transmission of SARS-CoV-2. Now, this pandemic has not just caused morbidity or mortality, it has also caused societal disruption of a magnitude that has not been seen by majority of us. We have not seen this happening in last 100 years around us. So morbidity and mortality is one, but societal disruption is the second part of the goal for framework. The second column of this framework is allocation criteria. How do we address this goal? How this goal has to be achieved? So under the allocation criteria, we need to take care of the following: risk of acquiring the infection. So how does one acquire infection? Who acquires the infection? Now, once the infection is acquired, what is the severity of the morbidity and the mortality? Which are the people who are going to suffer the most because of the vaccine in terms of disability, morbidity, or mortality? And as I said, what is the negative societal impact because of the pandemic, and whether your vaccine is going to take care of that or not? Transmitting infection to others is the fourth thing that needs to be taken care of when we are looking at the allocation criteria under the regulatory framework. So that's why you look at the people who are in the front line being vaccinated first, because they fulfill most of these criteria in the earnest. Now, on the basis of this allocation criteria, we generally divide this allocation under the allocation framework. We generally divide allocation into phases: phase 1, 2, 3, or phase. For example, we are currently in the phase 1, wherein we are giving vaccines to frontline workers, whether they are the healthcare workers or those involved in the transportation, policing. They all are a part of our first phase of allocation under the allocation framework. Now, the foundational principles for all allocation frameworks, including the COVID-19 pandemic, the foundational principles for this were two basic foundational principles. One was ethical principles. And what did these ethical principles mean? It meant that we have to provide maximum benefit. The benefit has to be maximum, concerns have to be equal, and health equities have to be mitigated. We cannot brush away health equities when we are talking of the ethical principles involved with the framework. Second are the procedural principles. So beyond ethical principles, the foundation also talks about the procedural principles. And in procedural principles, we need to take a fairness, transparency, and evidence base. And somewhat, this is something that has been a cause of concern for some people in the last 2-3 months, when they have talked about the lack of evidence in developing vaccines, lack of evidence in rolling out these vaccines. But when we talk of framework, these three things are the key: fairness, transparency, and evidence base before we start rolling out the vaccines in general populations. So this is how vaccination rollout will look like. This is the key about which we will talk. And beyond that, there are not many things to talk about. This is how the vaccine rollout will look like and how exactly the framework takes care of these vaccine rollout. So at this point in time, if you look at the first part, the upper quadrant of the first part, if you look at that, this is the phase we are in at this point in time. We have the limited doses available. We don't have, if we look at the total number of vaccinations that are required to be carried out across the world, it will take us a minimum of 5 years going by the way we are doing at this point in time. So dosages are limited, requirement is huge. number of vaccine makers are few. We don't have a huge number of vaccine makers. And the need is, as I said, is at the highest level at this point in time because we are in the midst of the pandemic. Once the pandemic starts settling down, we may not need this number of vaccines. The vaccine numbers may be reduced as such. So limited dose available. So what should we do when we have the limited dose available? We will need to go for targeted administration. Targeted administration will be required to achieve coverage in priority population. This is something that we are doing at this point in time. We are targeting the priority population because the doses are limited to us. So administration has to be tightly focused. As you all people may have realized that at this point in time, the administration of vaccines, the messaging part of it, the COVID part of it is all regulated. Who will be vaccinated and how exactly his vaccination will be reflected on the app. All of this is regulated because of the fact that the administration has to be focused and administration is in closed settings only. So we are doing administration in places of work or other vaccination sites, for example, our hospitals or healthcare facilities. Now, it's definite that at some point in time, we will move into the second phase of it. We will move into the large number of doses available. As you know, at this point in time in India, we have 2 vaccines, but we are expecting to roll out another 5 vaccines in very near future. So there will be those single dose vaccines or the three dose regimes of the vaccines which is being launched by the Zydus Cadila. So the number of vaccines will be larger. The basket of vaccine options will increase. The vaccine supply will increase. The manufacturers will increase. So that the increase in the number of doses will be there. What should we do at that point in time? So we can broaden our administration network at that point in time. Once the number of doses increased, from being a focused administration or a targeted administration, we may need to go at a broad-based administration, and we will need to expand beyond initial population. So we can go into commercial and private sector as well. We may need to enroll pharmacies, doctors, public health professionals, family care medicine people. We may need to roll them in and ask them to start supplying vaccines. But public health sites, vaccination at public health sites should continue as we were doing in those times when the doses were in limited availability. Now, once we have the large doses of vaccines available, we will gradually move into phase third of this distribution framework, wherein vaccination will be a routine strategy. It will be like vaccinating for other diseases which are in our vicinity. Something like the way Western world does for influenza vaccination. So it will probably move into that direction. And I always keep saying this, that if we have to take care of COVID vaccination of a large population, a large number of people, we need to integrate this with some form of a program or a platform wherein this vaccine is blended with other vaccination procedures, maybe a sort of an adult vaccination program where other vaccines are also rolled out in addition to COVID-19 vaccination. So if we have that stage, if we reach that stage, I think vaccination in COVID-19 should be the same as is for other vaccines which are available in the market. Both the private and the public players are there. Whosoever wants to get vaccinated goes to the private or the public players as per his need, and the payment part can be put into place. So anybody who wants to get vaccinated at some private place can pay for this vaccine and get vaccinated. So that is something that will be there in future for us. But at this point in time, we have limited dose availability. So regulatory framework has to be in place to take care of targeted administration and focused distribution. Right. So what are the key points that we need to consider? Why do we beyond the fact that we have to have a regulatory framework, what do we need to take care of other things? What are the key points that need to be considered once we are talking of rolling out COVID-19 vaccination? Now, as you know, all of us know this fact that COVID-19 vaccination came all of a sudden. So no country in this world had budgeted for vaccination process required to take care of COVID-19 vaccination. So countries started building into the budgets for COVID-19 vaccination as late as 2021, as late as December 2020 and the beginning of 2021. So we need to take care of the fact that the amount of money that will be required to spend on costing and funding of COVID-19 vaccination does not chip away from the money that is being deployed in routine immunization processes, for example. So routine immunization budget should not suffer, and COVID vaccination should be separately costed for. Funding and costings of COVID-19 should be separately included in the budget. For example, the short-term budget should consider the initial allocation that covers the first 3% of national population. As we are at this point in time saying that we will initially need to vaccinate 3% of the targeted population, and we will move into the next 17% in a phased manner. So at this point in time, we can take care of 3%, and the medium-term budget can think of numbers beyond these 20% who ought to be taken care of in earlier phase. So first phase, maybe the budget should focus on only the 20% of population, and the next phase, it can go beyond this 20% of initial priority populations. Now, after costing and budgeting, we need to take care of the vaccination delivery strategies. As I said, unless and until this COVID-19 vaccination is merged into an existing program or is built around some other program, for example, adult vaccination programs wherein we go for hepatitis B vaccination of adults, wherein we go for yellow fever wherever it is required, or whether we go for the influenza vaccines per se, unless and until it is merged with those, it will be difficult to roll out it on a large scale. So leveraging existing service delivery structures will be very important, and maybe using those fixed site settings close to the target population will be helpful. But beyond that, we will also need to have robust vaccine safety monitoring and AEFI system in place. So we will need to take care and report adverse drug events, adverse events following immunization. That is something that we need to keep in place, because that is something that has to be inbuilt with the vaccination process that is going to be rolled out for a large population, large number of people in next future. As I said, collaborate with programs in different sectors, which includes private partners who are willing to roll out the vaccines. We should involve them as well. But before that, we need to go for surveys, focus group discussions, community meetings, and so forth to gather preferences on vaccine strategy. Before rolling out a particular vaccine strategy, maybe we need to talk to people who are the stakeholders in this vaccination program and gather from them what exactly is needed to be taken care of for this rollout. The third component is supply chain and deployment. I probably talked about it in detail as well. So as the numbers will increase, the availability of vaccine numbers will increase, and the availability from different market manufacturers will increase. Probably the supply chain and deployment will be taken care of. But the key will be a deployment plan and standard operating procedures has to be there. So unless and until we have the standard operating procedures for how exactly these vaccines are manufactured and how exactly these vaccines are transported and deployed, that will be very important. And we will also need to take care of a surge which will increase, which may or may not happen in next 1-2 years. So whether we are prepared, whether our supply chain is ready for that surge or not, that has to be taken care of. A robust oversight and data-driven management, including systems for monitoring adherence to cold chain practices, is something key. Something that we saw we did not adhere to very strictly when we were rolling out, when we talk of the vaccination in case of animal bites. So we always keep talking about this robust adherence to cold chain practices. So this is something that we will need to be taken care of. Another is forecasting vaccines and logistic needs. As I said, initially the vaccine requirement may be scarce, but as the vaccine requirement starts going up, a vaccine traceability system to ensure the traceability of COVID-19 vaccines, to avoid a risk of diversion and falsification of the vaccines is important. This is something that I came across once we were doing vaccination in our part as well. We, at some point in time, saw that people were ready to get themselves registered in the COVID app and show themselves as registered as vaccinated, but in effect had not received vaccination. So this is something that will need to be taken care of to establish a vaccine traceability system to ensure that COVID vaccines are not diverted. Another thing that I would like to talk of is the app system that is being in place at this point in time, the COVID app. Now, most of the vaccination that is being received by people at this point in time is through this app. So you have a portal system wherein your name is registered, you receive a message, and in response to that message, you get vaccinated. And that once you receive the vaccine, it gets again registered on the portal, and you again receive a message that you have been partially vaccinated. And in a later part of this phase 1, we will receive the message that we have been fully vaccinated. But when we go into general population, when we move from this captive cohort of healthcare workers or the frontline workers, when we move into general population, I'm not very convinced with whether this COVID app is going to work or not. So maybe we may need to diversify and find other ways of reaching out to a larger population than solely resting on an app only. And lately, I heard and read about this as well, that Arogya Setu is getting connected to COVID, and there is an integration to COVID app. And when I went into this, I found a few hiccups when I was trying to register through Arogya Setu onto the COVID app. So this is something that will need to be taken care of when we move into the general population. And I hope that the governments across the world take care of these hiccups that are there in these applications, which take care of the vaccination at this point in time. Beyond that, what is very important for all of us to recognize as healthcare professionals is that good quality surveillance system will be needed for future of vaccines. Now, as we have been talking about that last few days, a few weeks, there has been a talk of newer strains coming up: the Brazilian variant, the South African variant, the UK variant, which are perceived to be a threat to our vaccination program. But as I talk at all other forums, that they may not be as big a threat as is being talked about. But to be ahead of this vaccine, to be ahead of this virus, the COVID-19 pandemic virus, if you want to be ahead of this virus, we need to have good quality surveillance system to develop better quality vaccines, and to have probably a polyvalent or a quadrivalent vaccine, or trivalent or a quadrivalent vaccine to take care of these variants which are circulating or which may come to us in future period of time. Generally seen, there is a lag time of around approximately 6 months between popular viral strain identification and vaccine manufacture. So people around keep doing research, some research on which are the popular vaccines, popular viruses around which can infect people, and build their vaccines around those popular viruses. But a lag period of around 6 months has been observed to be between that virus strain identification and the vaccine manufactured against those strains. So it is very important that we stay ahead of them and have good quality surveillance systems so that we pick up those viral strains as early, which are popularly circulating around us, and tailor our vaccines to tame these viral strains only. So that will be the key at this point in time, as we say that we have only 10 surveillance, 10 laboratories which take care of these, or 10 surveillance sites which take care of these new variants. Maybe we will need to build a large pool of these surveillance sites which take care of the newer strains of vaccine that are coming up, so that our vaccine strategy is good enough to tackle all these. So that's all from my side. If there are any questions, we can take them at this point in time, or if you feel, you can write to me on my email. The email is given here. Call me on my number. I will be more than happy to answer them if I am able to. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Dr. Nilesh, you are not audible. You are unmute, please, Yusuf.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. So thank you, Dr. Anna. It was great hearing from you, especially the part about risk benefits to be balanced while taking the vaccination. And that's exactly the reason why we are vaccinating the people with the highest probability of getting the disease, and people with the highest probability of getting the complications, the one with the comorbidities first. Yes, the supply is very less right now, so we are only targeting the top populations right now. But once it's more, then I'm sure that we'll get in private sector to pitch in to make the vaccine accessible to all the public. So thank you once again. So next we have Dr. Arvind Kumar, faculty from AIIMS, who has been in the front line fighting this pandemic for India. And he's also heading the employees COVID care at AIIMS. So Dr. Arvind will be talking about his on-the-field experiences with this vaccination whole project. So Dr. Arvind, please, over to you.
So, before I start, I just want to reconfirm that I'm audible and I'm sharing my slide right now. Is it okay with all of you?
Yes, yes. We can hear you and we can see your screen also.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Raman and Dr. Nilesh, and thank you very much to AFPI for giving me this opportunity to be here and to talk for AFPI and Practo. So thank you again, Dr. Raman. Till this morning, I had just planned that I'll talk on vaccination, but your vision salutes that you guided me to talk on a little bit of how we tackled the journey, the COVID pandemic also here at All India Institute of Medical Science. So in my next 20 minutes of talk, I would be unfolding the journey of the pandemic that we did here at AIIMS Delhi in 5 to 7 minutes, and then in rest 13 minutes, I will be talking on the portion that on vaccination, how we were involved in the trial, and then how we did at the time of rolling it out. So we, as we all know, that on 31st of December, we have cluster of pneumonia from Wuhan, for which the whole world at that time was not that much aware of, which later proved to be a great menace to the whole world. After that, India got its first case in Thrissur, Kerala on 21st of January this last year. And then at that particular time, WHO declares it as public health emergency of international concern. Meanwhile, at AIIMS, we got the first case in Delhi as well as at AIIMS in 2nd of March 2020. And at the same time around, WHO declares it a global pandemic. So, my dear friends, on this particular platform, that was a time when there was a lot of unrest in the whole campus among all the stakeholders, all the departments, all the healthcare workers. That was a time when as per the suggestions, as per the instructions given by various faculties, the task force was constituted under the leadership of head of the Department of Medicine, AIIMS. So in the beginning, we had multiple meetings. The direction was not so much clear. We had multiple meetings comprising of stakeholders from administration, residents, the diagnostic teams from microbiology, pathology, sampling teams, and infection control team. So we had frequent intervals at that particular time. And after many sittings, we started building our stepping stones. So at that period of time, we had designated a few areas in AIIMS as COVID areas only. The major parts was, the one which was there in Jhajjar, which was completely devoted to COVID. Then the whole trauma center was changed to a COVID center, and trauma was shifted to main building. Besides this, few of the centers were there, designated in main building as testing centers, quarantine centers, and then a few centers for a few wards for mild and moderate cases. So all these came as, a learning experience for all of us. And these came out from our own, brainstorming sessions, about discussing among ourselves, and we then gradually kept on building. So I have put some figures of the various centers which were completely converted into COVID centers. So once the task force was made under the leadership of HOD Medicine, then we thought on various teams which will aid into combating the pandemic. So few teams of importance were central sampling team, which would be then and there, whenever you call them at bedside, once you suspect something, the team will visit, minimizing the movement of patients, and they will sample the patient then and there. We had also formed central contact tracing team. Every evening, by the time we get the composite results of RT-PCR, the contact tracing team would call each and every patient, try to contact the high-risk patient to whomsoever he has contacted in last 48 hours, will try to do the justice by quarantining them, and all the cases were isolated at designated areas or at all India Institute of Medical Science. So at that time in March, as a department, as an institute, we started formulating management protocols. As you are seeing here, we had almost around 5 to 6 versions, which were later taken up by Government of India and widely circulated across India, which helped us to a great extent to all the physicians around this country to, be on the same page as far as management is concerned. Together with that, we also started training programs, thinking and taking care of, not mixing of, taking care of distancing by various means, electronic means, on talking on basics, advances, diagnosis, prevention, social vaccination, what we called that earlier. So this was a term given at our institute, and we began working on training and education side by side together with this major planning and of COVID combating. So this slide is to show just a template slide that each and every team was supposed to give their own data at particular interval, that what they have done in last, let's say, fortnight, last 1 week. So this is one of the data given by central contact tracing team. By what we realized that our major chunk of patients were coming from adjacent area called as Kotla at AIIMS Delhi. So, I mean, by this slide, I just want to tell that every morning, the task force kept on meeting, I mean, introspecting, putting their own data, what they have done in the last 1 or 2 weeks. And then we try to build upon them. And then we try to modify our steps in further combating the pandemic. So these are the major steps taken by COVID task force to combat the pandemic in whole. What we really learned is that contact tracing played a major role. Central sampling team also made it very easy for all of us not to, I mean, help not to spread the disease if at all somebody is suspected. Policy on home isolation unburdened the hospital resources, and early inclusion. So there was a time when there was a lot of hesitation of steroid use, even by, I mean, big stakeholders. So we were the front in that, and we started including steroid, which later proved to be one of the major, life-saving medicine as far as this pandemic is concerned. So after RT-PCR, there were a lot of reluctance not to, I mean, take other tests, but rapid antigen tests were tested, they are compared, they validated, and these were the tests which early basically helped in early triad and decongesting emergency wards. Online classes helps us in education and prevention. So this was about major points about pandemic. Now I come to the process of vaccine inoculation, the experience from the ground of our institute. So, I mean, vaccine development has certain phases, as had coronavirus vaccine. So you can see that once we started, we had multiple, I mean, vaccination, but ultimately we landed up with very small viruses which were approved and given. So this slide is showing the type of vaccination, and the colored ones are those who are on field being given in India or outside. So Covishield and Covaxin is something which is there in India. Novax, Moderna, Pfizer, Sputnik has lately come in Russia. So these are the vaccines which are there on run. So coming to vaccine development in one slide, that it takes a lot of time, but from our previous experiences of corona, which never, I mean, which was not required, but we as a country, as an institute, the various phases were combined and overlapped so that the whole process of vaccine development can be done in 12 to 24 months. So as an institute, India's indigenous vaccine is COVID-19, developed by Bharat Serum in collaboration with ICMR and NIV, in which AIIMS was also a center of this Covaxin trial. So somewhere in July 20, the phase 1 and phase 2 trial started. Phase 3 is currently going on. The efficacy data of which is expected to be with us by the end of this month. In between, before this phase 3 results were available, in the larger welfare of the humanity of Indian people, I mean, Covaxin was approved by DCGI on January 3rd, 21. So, and this vaccine is there. So phase 1 had shown significant level of neutralizing antibodies that were elevated in all the participants on the 3 months of study. Phase 2 had shown good tolerable safety outcomes compared to the other vaccines which were there available worldwide, as well as one from India. So this vaccine is, I mean, just to mention, that is basically inactivated whole virus vaccine, in which you have inactivated the virus itself. So conceptually it looks good, but if I am to comment upon, I mean, which is what and which is what. So this is difficult at this point in time. This is very difficult to advocate one vaccine among the two which we have are currently having in this country, Covishield and Covaxin. But if you see the results, phase 2 had no major adverse effect to comment upon, and it was carried nicely as the monitoring period was of 6 months. So things are going well, and till date there is no very bad severe adverse effect to comment upon. So even before this rollout date was declared by Government of India, that is 16th of January, AIMS New Delhi was part of the dry run of COVID vaccination, in which we had mocked the complete drill of vaccination as far as center is concerned, as far as the apprehensions of the various healthcare workers, healthcare front workers are concerned, talking to them, allaying their anxiety is concerned, various following ask question is concerned. So this was this dry run which helped us realizing the problems, difficulty, the anxiety of COVID-19 vaccination. And what we call as infodynamics, we realized by after this dry run and before the dry run, after the dry run, that these infodynamics, if not taken in good sense, can cause a lot of damage. So what we started percolating is not to misinform. Don't engage in this kind of misinformation. If there is something to report properly at proper place, block something which is causing a lot of restlessness among society, among healthcare workers, because they were the first who were going to get vaccines. So this was all the outcome of dry run, the realization, the understanding of this level of apprehensions, level of anxiety. Again, this was the time when where we realized that what were the major concerns of the healthcare workers, the healthcare persons who had concerns regarding following asked questions like what was the benefit, why we should take, what if we have already got the infection of COVID-19, does it help it or not, how much time it will take, why we need to have second infection, can we have COVID infection after vaccination. So we really came across a hell lot of questions after being into this dry run and talking to them. So learning from this dry run, we try to learn much more from the ongoing trial, the intra-trial adverse effect, which really hardly tell any major side effects. So all the side effects were mild or moderate, which we realized. Then all the side effects were studied well, where and what and in how much percentage it was there. And lately, once we developed the document which is to be handed over to the patients coming for vaccination, it was already ready before 16th of January, before vaccines were there on rollout. So we had made a document which will talk about the patient's concerns. So the handouts were given to all the patients, all the healthcare workers before vaccination, and we have developed a protocol to combat any side effects post vaccination. So we had a protocol in place that if someone gets some side effects, how to take care of it. So for that, a vaccine nodal officer was made, under which a team of clinical care, a team of decentralizing the information was made, in which team from anesthesia, medicine, and pharmacology pharmacology was taken in, and a complete robust system was generated that if anyone comes to the particular center for vaccination, he's very well comfortable that okay, if I'm going to get something, everything is in place. After this, the time came on 16, the time of vaccine execution. So as I already told, we had already everything in place, the monitoring system in a adjacent room, the doctor and nurses with adequate drugs and devices in case of any emergency in an adjacent room, the system of ambulance to transport the patient, because the building of vaccine was different, to transport if someone gets some bad occurrence, to shift to emergency. So in the same document, we were ready with eligibility criteria depending upon our own clinical experience, as well as the trial results. So one thing which I would like to make out, one of the indications, like those were initially contraindication, like bleeding disorder or patients who are blood thinners. So ultimately it was striked off. So there was no reason found to why those who are on blood thinners should not be given co-vaccine. So once all these things were checked off, then only the patients were found suitable for vaccination. So intra-trial, post-trial, the adverse effects that we have found till date is majorly mild or moderate, except for one severe anaphylaxis reaction on day 1. That was to one of the our guard staff who went into anaphylaxis, needing vasopressors, and he was shifted to ICU for approximately 1 day, and then he was fine. But till date, no calamity has happened. Most of the side effects are just mild to moderate, like pain, swelling, weakness, body ache, fever, malaise, and rash, and nausea and vomiting. So we are happy with this journey of vaccine till date. These were some, news there on newspapers, but yes, we tackled them well. The second vaccine which is talked in India is Covishield. Covishield is basically, brought from outside, and now they are replicated in India. It's a vector vaccine where we have taken chimpanzee adenovirus as a vector, and then a spike protein is inserted on the surface so that it has good immunogenicity, and major the phase 3 trial of this Covishield started in India in August by Bharat Serum, and then this is a process of Covishield generation. So the major side effect of Covishield were again mild to moderate. It is prudent to mention here. They are not that much different if you compare to Covaxin. Major side effects are fever, tiredness. One thing which I would like to make a point here is that if you see the natural history of COVID infection itself and Covishield vaccination, post-vaccination effect. So it's my own interpretation, my own observation is that post-vaccination Covishield is slightly resembling the phase as you get in fever. So most of the cases are having fever in Covishield, which might not be that much true for Covaxin. So the serious adverse events which were noted intra-trial or post-trial, which of Covishield, are also tackled well, and till date no calamity is happening. Virus vaccine efficacy of this Covishield is around 70 to 90% at various centers. So again, the points which needs to be mentioned here is that where till this day data is not clear is fertility, pregnancy, hypersensitivity, concurrent illness, and bleeding, diathesis, immunocompromised individuals, where we have to be extra cautious. So till date, all these entities have been kept in contraindications for Covishield vaccination. So if I summarize both Covaxin and Covishield, so they were both were rolled out to begin on 16th of January. Till date, around 70 lakhs COVID vaccines have been given in India, and around 2 lakhs Covaxin has been given in India. So this data itself tells its own story. I'm not people are apprehensive of what, again I'm telling, I'm not advocating any viruses, because both of them are approved, and till date, if you compare, before comparing, we have to have data of Covaxin, which is still to be still to reach to us by end of this month. But yes, data tells a lot. One particular point about is the Covishield, the production is larger than Covaxin, so that is one thing. But also we cannot rule out the apprehensions that someone has about the second vaccine. So the numbers tells it very clearly that people have inclination towards one of the vaccines. Thank you very much for your kind attention. This was the thing given to me. I would be very happy to take any questions if you have from the house. Thank you very much, Dr. Raman and Dr. Nilesh, once again.
Thank you, Dr. Arvind. That was a great talk on the AIMS experience with the COVID pandemic, how you tackle the whole pandemic, and your experiences and your learnings from the vaccination and the vaccine trial itself. I actually, I'm a regular viewer of those online videos that AIMS has, and I've learned a lot from it. And I'm sure the whole of Indian healthcare workers have learned a lot from the videos which are put out by AIMS. Second thing I wanted to mention about your talk was the infodemic that you talked about, the fake news which has been going out, and how we have to tackle all those aspects of the fake news about around vaccination, the fake news about the deaths due to vaccination, the fake news that vaccines don't work. So I really enjoyed the talk. Finally, I'm proud to get Dr. Raman on, the president of Academy of Family Physicians of India, and he will be summing up the whole topic about the vaccination process and the vaccines for COVID pandemic in India. Please, Dr. Raman.
Thank you, Dr. Nilesh. And at the outset, I would like to thank Practo for hosting this wonderful session on behalf of Academy of Family Physicians of India and my co-speakers, Dr. Arvind Kumar and Dr. Sunil Rana, both from bringing out very important points from public health perspective, as well as from the clinical, as well as technical trial part from All India Institute of Medical Sciences. So we know how actually these vaccines were, regulated from the public health perspective, and also how they were stringently monitored for any adverse side effects or any adverse outcomes, and how they were finally approved. And since we already have, it was started 1 month back. So now even today I was reading newspaper, the second cycle of the people who were vaccinated on 16th of January are now being given second dose in Delhi. So we have already covered some 70 lakh population in India, which is huge. To know the adverse effects, and mostly, we are here to talk about the apprehension about the vaccination program that is being rolled out at such a big level. But thank God that we have reached this stage, given what we were, is in a situation where we were under an unimaginable kind of one of the biggest lockdowns of the world, in a population of 1.3 billion people, and it was indeed a great challenge, a disruption of all human life, not only India but across world. And we were just thinking, we did not know even 2 months back that it will start unfolding like this with vaccines, and even though the number of cases are on decline, but arrival of vaccine is a great relief for all of us, not just healthcare professionals, but for general population, as well as for the businesses, which would be opening once we have sufficient number of immunity and vaccination demonstrated. So I will be talking about general things about the vaccine, where we are from the pandemic point of view, and what exactly needs to be done in near future. I am a private practitioner myself, and though largely the vaccine program is being regulated through the public health channels of India, we have started the process of getting even the private practitioners being enrolled through their district vaccine programs and district medical officers initiatives. And large number of private practitioners have also received vaccinations so far. And largely things have been uneventful, and except for a few minor complaints as discussed by Dr. Arvind. So I'll just share my screen. I hope it is visible.
Yes, it is.
Okay. So this is the introduction part. So this is where we are. We were getting around, close to 80,000 plus or 1 lakh cases per day towards end of September. And this is where we are now. We are almost, there's a decline of overall COVID cases in India. This graph I got from 2 days. It's slightly older, but this is what it looks like. So we are much better as compared to what we were few months back. There was a lot of apprehension on ongoing lockdowns, and even as we read from across world, there are curfews, lockdowns in many Western countries. Talk about new strains, new patterns of disease evolvement in different parts of the world. But thankfully, we are achieving, as in many parts of India, we have heard and read, even herd immunity. But vaccine is very, very important from the long-term management perspective of this pandemic. This is the overall cases that we have in India. Total, we have around 1 crore plus, and we have recovered almost all. Deaths around is 150,000, which is the same level for many weeks now. Whereas if you look at the world, there are 108 million cases, only around 60% recovered, and deaths are 2.38 million. So even if you look from the straight statistics, you see that we have contributed to around 10% of the cases, but our death rates are considerably lower to the what you see in the rest of the world. So not only from the vaccines perspective, but also in general, I would say that as a country, from the public health perspective, we have been a largely successful country in terms of pandemic containment, as what it appears now. And if you remember, only a few months back, 6 months back, situation was like this, and they would talk about PPEs, non-availability of masks, gloves, and from there we have reached to a level where we are exporting and providing support to our neighboring countries also in vaccination. So it is a huge success, and it's something we need to be proud of, and a matter of great relief. So from testing kits to now to vaccines, to the challenge of not having sufficient number of ICUs but capacity for, but this has been largely we have been able to address all those things as it appears now. Now vaccines have been already talked about, largely the technical things, Covishield and Covaxin, and I need not repeat them again. And we all know the first round was initiated, one of the largest vaccination programs of the world, on 16th of January, and second round after 28 days. So today it was started. The first group included the healthcare and frontline workers like doctors, nurses, paramedics, and all healthcare power professionals, and also police and other frontline workers who were at the forefront of fighting the pandemic. And we hope the second group, which will receive the COVID vaccine, will be persons over 50 years of age and persons under 50 years of age who have certain comorbidities. And this, as we heard from Dr. Sunil Raina, this is all regulated, and this is under a control plan. It is a random thinking, but it is a controlled plan to unfold the vaccination program across India. And this is the target we all have heard about: 30 crores, 1 crore health workers, and 2 crores frontline workers. And it is indeed challenging for a country like ours with so much of diversity, geographical spread, and population, and issues of logistics. But we heard Prime Minister of India speak that we need to gear the whole system of administration, that what we do in our elections. So he compared the vaccination program with the general elections of India, our capacity to do things at a large level. Many times we do not realize how much capacity we have in terms of servicing volumes of population. If you look at Delhi Metro, Delhi, around 2.5 million, 25 lakh people travel by Delhi Metro, which is the population of Berlin. So we have huge capacity in terms of transportation. There are 2 crore people traveling every day in Indian Railways, which is under lockdown largely for 1 year. But that is the population of Australia. So we never realized, but we indeed have a big capacity to run programs. And before this program was rolled out on 16th of January, all logistics were set across India, and we could see that simultaneously across India, across breadth of geography, vaccines were available. And we could see in our social media accounts on Facebook, people posting happily about their vaccination experiences. And mostly these have been positive. On my network, on my own professional circle, I have not heard anyone, any single medical professional having any major side effect. Everybody who has taken vaccine has largely, said that it's just minor, maybe local fever, local pain, or some fever. But mostly people have appreciated that there are no major side effects on the healthcare professional that I know personally. So, and there are data to support it. Dr. Arvind showed that, and you see these happy pictures across India. And this reminds me of a picture from 1947. This is a picture of a photo of Honorable Health Minister of that time, Rajkumari Amrit Kaur, was also founder of All India Institute of Medical Sciences, and she's receiving penicillin doses from the government of Canada. So you can imagine, as a country from where we have traveled, and now the whole trial of COVID vaccine was done at All India Institute of Medical Sciences, which was founded by her. So this is how countries evolve, and this is how we are developing as a nation. And it is indeed a matter of great pride for all of us that this work has been done at our Indian institutions: ICMR, All India Institute of Medical Sciences, National Institute of Virology, Indian Serum Institute of India. So all of them has collectively contributed to this outcome, and we should also appreciate all those who volunteered for the trials. I expect that majority of them were healthcare professionals. So this is a collective win for all of us, and we should contribute toward positively taking forward from where we have what success we have achieved now. So as I was saying, from receiving support and donation from other countries, we are able to support faraway countries like Brazil and also our neighboring countries. So we have capacity, as we know that India is the largest vaccine producer of the world, so vaccine hub of the world, and this is something we very, very proud moment for us. And this is, as you can see, this is today's ANI's post on Twitter. Delhi gets the second dose of COVID-19 vaccine. And this is the current stage of the vaccination program, the number of coverage. We are about to reach 8 million or 80 lakhs soon. So this is sufficient numbers to allay fear or any kind of hesitancy in taking vaccines. And largely, in a country like India, where we have so much of very active media, any large adverse effect would have been reported. But this is truly telling. And many times in Western press, people doubted in the beginning when we did not have enough number of positive cases. People said that you are not testing enough. When we increase our testing capacity, then they said that India is moving towards a catastrophe. And now when it is declining, and then they are saying that this is a miracle. I mean, this is not miracle. This is a capacity of such a large, big country like ours, and we should appreciate it. And as we heard from Dr. Sunil Rana, most of the vaccines like Pfizer and Moderna are already booked for the Western rich country, OECD countries. So it's really good that we are self-sufficient in this regard, and we should not miss opportunity on this one because of any laxity, because of any reluctance, because of any infodemic or false information that is being spread around. We have capacity, but if we fall in trap of this kind of misinformation, it would largely impact the capacity we have. One thing is that not having capacity, and then when we have capacity, we will not be utilizing it because of our own foolishness, I would say. I mean, frankly, because it is all evidence-based, data-based. There's nothing you can that is. So Side effects, Dr. Arvind has already discussed, very rare, only one person from AIMS, a guard, had a severe side effect of anaphylaxis. And largely it is local muscle pain, body ache, fever kind of symptoms, which would subside not within 1 day or so. And this is also being discussed in media both ways. Already there is a lot of reluctance around vaccines, and there are people who are against vaccinations across world, not just in India, but in US also, in Western European culture, there's also a lot of reluctance against vaccinations. So this reluctance, this safety concern are largely, maybe 1 month back when it was initiated, it was okay to talk about. But after 1 month, when the second dose has been started, being administered, it is futile to fall in trap of those kind of discussions. And apart from minor side effects, or not much of side effects, these are the general information also available in popular media. I'm saying because what is available in public domain should match with what is being discussed in the scientific arena, in the institutions. So this we see largely has been propagated also in public domain, and history of allergy, fever, breathing disorder, as Dr. Arvind just informed, has been struck off. It's no longer one of the don'ts. And serious health issues, severe allergic reactions for both Covaxin and Covishield, as I mentioned here. I did not repeat them again. And for Covishield, for example, pregnancy and breastfeeding, these are all the general things which I expect that most of us are aware through public information system, as well as from social media, and it is largely available in the news, mainstream media also. So there are many candidates. These two are in use. They are being administered. And JICOV-D by Zydus, Sputnik, the Russian vaccine, in collaboration with Reddy's laboratory. So as we heard from the other two speakers, we will have large basket and choices. And as we already know, it is not very expensive. It would not be costing, even if it is made available in private market in future. And we should be assured, and we are actually assured, that vaccines, we will have sufficient number of vials, vaccines, and production, so that we will be able to cover whole of our population to a level where we achieve we already have some herd immunity, which is natural, but also through vaccination, we will be able to achieve overall population coverage, which will protect not just country from the disease perspective, but also the economy, which is largely under shutdown. And we hope that the service sector, which is under lockdown, and because of that, many jobs have been lost. And there will be serious, it is a serious loss in the economy. It is unprecedented in the human history, not only just for India, but we hope that with a positive mindset and with all these developments, we will overcome. Frequently asked questions, Dr. Arvind already showed them, and these are all available at the website of Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. These are the standard frequently asked questions and answers. It is not mandatory to take COVID vaccine, but it is good to protect oneself against this disease and also prevent from spreading to other people. And in the beginning of this program, there was some reluctance, but largely the fears have been allayed. And mostly in my circle and in our contact, our network, medical doctors, healthcare professionals have voluntarily taken COVID vaccine without any fear. So another one was about the, why is it safe? Because vaccines have been, as Dr. Arvind also said, that there has been overlap in the 3 phases. But as we have administered in India itself, 70 lakhs vaccines already, and it is data proven that, and not just data proven, but also from the regulatory perspective, from the trial regulation and how this all is controlled by Indian Council of Medical Research and Drug Controller General of India, vaccines are rolled out, especially for a population like ours. There cannot be any hesitant, it can be done in haste. So it is only done when safety, security have been adequately tested and weighed against. Is it necessary for COVID recovered persons to take the vaccine? Yes, it is advisable to receive complete schedule of COVID vaccine, even if somebody has passed infection of COVID-19. Out of multiple vaccines available, how one is more effective chosen for administration? We have only two options now. And from our previous speaker, we saw that there is inclination for one, but there is no scientific proven data yet to say that one vaccine is better than the other one. Only in due course of time we will come to know about the efficacy and the comparison. And largely what is being available through our public health system should be welcomed. Many places we heard that healthcare professionals, even doctors, refused to take vaccine because it was not that particular vaccine. But that was again in the initial phase of the vaccination drive, and now mostly we don't hear such news anymore. Will the vaccine introduced in India be as effective as the one introduced in the other countries? I mean, in terms of Pfizer, and we already heard and read about the Chinese vaccine trial in Brazil, where they found it less effective, and Brazilian government, because of that, opted for the Indian vaccine. So there is no ground for us from India to doubt that our vaccines are less efficient or effective as compared to the other Western vaccines. And if one is taking medicine for illness like cancer, diabetes, hypertension, as we said, that the second phase will have vaccination inclusion for the people who, especially below 50, who have morbidities. So these are high risk people and they need to receive vaccines. Side effects we have already discussed. These are minor. Possibilities are immense from anaphylaxis, but mostly, as we know from data, it's only minor. Local pain, fever, headache, malaise, fatigue. These are the common. So given everyone simultaneously, as we heard from the regulation perspective on public health from Dr. Sunil Raina, there is a priority listing. First, where the healthcare workers and the frontline workers, and gradually it will be passed on to the high-risk people, elderly, as well as those who are below 50 with multimorbidity. Can a person presently having COVID-19 infection be vaccinated? It is better to wait for 14 days after a resolution of the symptoms, because if somebody is vaccinated, he may or she may increase the risk of spreading the same to others at the vaccination site. So it is advisable that if there's an ongoing COVID infection, not to take vaccine. Is it necessary for COVID recovered person to take a vaccine? Yes, it is a repetition again. So this is again about the eligibility. Ultimately, everybody will get the vaccine through the priority listing, and there is a system. And this is about the capacity, because we already run the largest immunization program in the world, catering to vaccination needs of more than 26 million newborns and 29 million pregnant women. So this is about the capacity. So largely, we will be able to cover all people. Can a person get a COVID vaccine without registration with health department? Not presently, because we need a data of who are all vaccinated. And as earlier through Arogya Setu, everybody who was infected was on the danger zone, red zone. And similarly, as we heard, that Arogya Setu as well as the COVID vaccine app will both be integrated in due course. And only after registration, anybody would be eligible for vaccination. And identity is required, because these are the identity cards or identity documents which will be permitted for allowing for vaccination. This will be verified at the vaccination center so that the right person gets the vaccine and it is put on record, documented for the safety of others also. Photo ID is required at the time of registration and must be produced and verified at the time of vaccination. These are the current practices. Maybe in future, after a couple of years, things may change, but this is the current regulation for vaccinations. Photo ID is required. Again, if a person is not able to produce photo ID, then it is not possible to get vaccinated. And all vaccinated persons will receive information through their registration details. They will receive SMS about. It will also be a QR code. Many of us have already seen them. The people displaying their COVID vaccine certificates. And at the session sites for vaccination, it is important that we maintain social distancing, hand sanitization, masks, and physical distance. This is important because any public place, movement, is a place of risk for COVID spread. So wherever you get an opportunity, or the general public gets an opportunity, the general sanitization and physical distance principles have to be maintained. We talk about COVID app. There are glitches on it, but largely because it is not open yet for general public, because the first phase of vaccination is going on, and as we heard from Dr. Sunil Raina, currently there is a limitation of vaccine availability, and it is being given through a priority list. But I'm sure this is not a major technical glitch, but more of it looks to me an administrative strategy. Once it is open for general public, people will be able to register and use COVID app also. And there is a fallacy with the applications. Initially, Arogya Setu was downloaded in huge numbers, but later we see that a fraction of people only use COVID Arogya Setu app. But same thing may happen with COVID also. But we also need to think from the government's side how apart from the COVID safety, COVID vaccines, how Arogya Setu can be made more robust kind of information system, more interactive, useful application. Anything which is not, every day we are bombarded with apps, applications. If it is not user friendly, if it is not useful in long term, people would not use it because nobody has sufficient time or patience to so I think in due course, very soon, this all technical glitches will be sorted out, and we will march through this success path that we have already embarked upon. And congratulations, especially to the healthcare workers. We must not forget the sacrifices that our fellow citizens, our fellow professionals, co-workers, frontline workers have made in line of duty, which is unprecedented. I remember one of the person who died among professionals was a family physician from Indore. And especially because from our academic's perspective, it is important because we are family physicians, the one who work in community. We often operate in limited space. And it is very, very important, apart from the vaccinations, to keep maintaining the level of hygiene, sanitation, and social distancing as it was during the pandemic time at our clinics. Our clinics should not be cramped, and it's a place of sanitization all the time, and there is no relaxation from the safety perspective every day, every moment. So thank you all for this opportunity. I thank Dr. Nilesh Bhandari for Practo, Dr. Arvind Kumar, Dr. Sunil Raina. Thank you all for sharing your expert views for our members, for our physicians and general population. I'm sure this will benefit and allay fears among healthcare professionals as well as general public. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Dr. Raman. Thanks a lot. Yes, it was a great overview, because I agree that though most health workers are confident about the vaccine, but there have been some doubts among healthcare workers and doctors also about the efficacy of the vaccines. I've heard some news about doctors and nurses refusing to take the vaccine also, especially down south here in Andhra and Kerala. So yes, I'm sure that this presentation and this talk would help clarify all those doubts among healthcare workers. And yes, I've hardly heard any side effects among my network, at least, except for fever on day 2 and some myalgia on day 1. I really haven't heard of any side effects. We have some questions. The first question is actually quite relevant to this particular topic right now. What about the long-term side effects of vaccination? Do we know? We don't, because we haven't really had the vaccine around for a long time. So people do have doubts. Doctors have doubts about what could be the long-term effects of vaccinations. I don't know if we have the data to say either ways, but if somebody could comment on this particular question.
So if you like to answer, get answered by me.
Yes.
You know, we at this point of time even don't know how this COVID will play. Those who have got COVID, we have classified them in long COVID, post COVID, and peri-COVID period. So we have a chunk of patients who are in their 6th month, 7th month of post COVID period right now, 7th month. So we are running clinics to take care of post COVID patients. So COVID itself, how it will play, we don't know, because the disease is, let's say, a mean of say 7-8 months old in India, 9 months old in India. As far as the vaccine is concerned, there will remain, the curtain in front of it, because time will tell. But yes, when we talk of pandemic, things go and things would go like this. Concept-wise, theory-wise, molecule-wise, receptor-wise, we talk. No, we don't expect something very major. There are some sporadic things which can be there, which is there with any vaccine. Any vaccine, with any vaccine, it can take place. So, yeah, but there is nothing specific to talk about that this vaccine will cause something extra, some extra damage to the mankind.
Thank you, Dr. Arvind. And I have some more questions for you exactly. Basically, a lot of questions are very clinical. We have answered most of them, but just to answer these questions specifically, which have been already answered in the presentations. So can old people be vaccinated? Can diabetic people be vaccinated? Can pregnant women be vaccinated? These are some particular subgroups which people have doubts. Could you please?
See, currently pregnant women are kept out of it. Currently, because of the fact that you are dealing with 2 lives, and what we call as social vaccination should be taken care of. Social vaccination means just the normal things like your hand hygiene, distancing, proper, masking. These 3 things are there, and that will work as good as a vaccine if you are taking care of it. The other thing is this key, particularly what I review and what I feel, that high risk groups are to be given. If you not give the vaccine to high risk, to whom you'll give? Because they are most vulnerable. But yes, in case to case basis, you have to take care of, certain problem at that particular time. If someone has some acute decompensation of the particular disease, yes, you should wait. But yes, old age, around, the age which has been given up to 65, they should take. If at all they are fitting somewhere in the handouts being given in the contraindication, they should not be. Kids and extreme of age, it has to be avoided. Yes.
Right, sir. Dr. Arvind, one more question for you. So there are questions around, will the second dose have more side effects than the first? So the people have said that there's more fever, there's more myalgia after the second dose. Is it true?
See, if you talk of concept, the medical concept behind vaccination, we are dealing with two vaccines. One is viral vector vaccine and second is inactivated whole virus vaccine. So we already have vaccines which are there from these two groups in with us. And boosting causing side effect, more side effect, it cannot be rationalized, cannot be explained that way. But yes, boosting is important because we have seen over time that the titers are going down. After 6 weeks, 7 months, titers are going down. One school of thought is that even if you have low titers and you get a trigger in terms of exposure by some COVID positive patient, the titer will shoot up. Like what you see in hepatitis B. In hepatitis B, once you have recorded that your titers are above 10, and even your titers have gone down to, let's say, 2. So more than 2 is protective level. So at the second time, even if you get a prick, you need not revaccinate yourself because of the fact that it will shoot up. So time will tell, but what is there to say that yes, there are chances that if you are vaccinated once, and even if you are not vaccinated for the second time, which is not there on the paper because I should not comment upon that. Yes, it is mandatory to take 2 vaccines by all the trials proven by, and you see the curves of titer going down after 4 or 6 weeks. Yes, you have to take, but yes, there are chances that you will get a shoot up of titers once you get some exposure, even after first vaccination. Side effects, no. Adult side effects are not there if you compare from a single dose of vaccine.
Thank you. I think that's a good answer for everybody. Dr. Sunil Raina, are you here?
Yes.
Yes, Dr. Sunil, one question for you. So as Dr. Raman shared that we'll soon be reaching around 80 lakh people vaccinated across India, mainly the healthcare workers. The phase 1, we need to reach 3 crores. So the question is, how do the common people register for the vaccine right now? I think the COVID app is not open right now. So how do common people register for the vaccination process, and how long do you think they would have to wait?
This is at this point in time very difficult to answer because of the fact that the governments will need to take a call on how exactly they will roll out and when exactly will they start rolling out it for the common people. Whatever is happening at this point in time is regulated through a framework set up already for vaccination. So you have the captive populations, whether it was the healthcare professionals or it is the frontline workers who will receive the vaccine. When we move to the phase 2, second part of it, when we are going to vaccinate people above 50 years of age or patient or with the comorbidity, then only we will see how exactly the government will ensure that people get registered. But most likely, how I see it at this point in time is that there will be a link up with Arvind Kumar app, and most of the people have already downloaded the Arvind Kumar app. The registration will probably through Arvind Kumar app, and then they will receive the messages through the app only. So there will be some sort of an integration between COVID app and the Arvind app, and Arvind app will be the launch pad for registration of majority of people. Beyond that, I would just like to answer where Dr. Arvind left with regard to the side effects for vaccinations. If you look at the history of vaccinations, most of the side effects for vaccination happen within a period of 24 to 96 hours. So maximum side effects for vaccines happen within a short period of 24 to 96 hours. So maybe in a day of 1 to 4. Long-term side effects for vaccines which are already rolled out, which are in the market, are unknown. They have been attributed at times in history that this may be because of the side effect of vaccines. For example, people in the West think that measles may be one of the reasons for a growing number of autistic children across the world. Maybe this is something that is being attributed to, but largely it has been seen in the vaccination history that most side effects happen in the period of 24 to 96 hours. Seeing side effects after 2 years, 3 years, 4 years is rarely there. So as long as we don't see these side effects, we should be fairly sure that these vaccines are safe.
Thank you, Dr. Raina. Dr. Raman, one question for you. How exactly did India escape this whole pandemic? Because there were studies earlier saying that we would have 1 crore infections and 50 lakh deaths and stuff like that. So how exactly do you think, why did India escape? Comparatively, we did very well compared to the whole world.
I think there would be many theories and researches and theses done on this particular topic. Great interest, not only in India, but all over the world also. But my personal perspective is that, being a practicing family physician, I see large number of, majority of my own patients are, cough, cold, fever kind, and through past 1 decade, I would say. So we are largely exposed to infections, viruses, which hardly we see in the Western population. So our resilience comes from our exposure and ability to live with the environment we are in. So that is one part. And second part is, of course, our I also many times we have complaints with our government systems, our political system, but largely we had a very good response to this pandemic and challenge, which was unprecedented in this century. And I would say across all governments, central governments and state governments have done their best. Our bureaucrats, our policemen, and there's no one can be left behind, said that this is only because of the scientists or because of the doctors. It was a combined resilience coming from within all of us, and also the environment we have been living through for centuries, millennium, and that has helped us. And also the positivity of our culture, that kuch nahi hoga, theek ho jayega. So that kind of attitude, in for small things, if you meet our Western counterparts, they are worried a lot about small things, small safety things. Many times we are careless, we are not concerned with safety, but that comes handy, particularly for this pandemic. Even if you see today, you go in malls and markets, you see people without masks.
True.
That a dangerous thing to do, but this is how we are like, out of chaos we bring success. But surely I would say the response of our public health system and our capacity has been tested, and that has come a very positive outcome.
Yes, sir. I totally agree.
I would just like to add to this, because this is something that has been fascinating me for last couple of weeks now. Beyond the fact that we delve into the microbiome theory that Dr. Raman talked about, that we are already exposed to the infections of this kind since our childhood. What I realize is that there's a concept which is known as the critical travel theory. Now, if you look at majority of Indian population, roughly 70-75% of our population lives in villages, our villages, and then they don't travel much. We don't have a very urbanized country as compared to Western population. If you look at US, if you look at the small countries in the Europe, they are more or less all urbanized. They don't have rural populations in their countries. In our place, if you look at the rural, if you look at, for example, UP, Bihar, we don't have an international, I don't think we have an international airport in UP or Bihar, which takes care of a large population of this country. We don't have an international airport in Northeast apart from West Bengal. But if you look at smaller countries across the world, you will have international airports at even the smallest of places. So travel is more or less restricted. Large-scale travel is more or less restricted in India. And pandemic imposed more or less enhanced those restrictions. So travel from large-scale villages to urban places was restricted, low. So maybe that is something that has, at the peak of epidemic, that has probably reduced the number of exposures that could have happened. Beyond the fact that we have the better immune system because of the exposures in our childhood.
Yes, Dr. Rana, I totally agree with you. The point I was making is that maybe many of us were not happy with the early restrictions on our lockdowns, but probably that is the reason we actually got through this pandemic positively.
Yes, if you look at the Indian, if you dissect the Indian scenario at this point in time. Now, one state that is not doing as well as others is, for example, Kerala. Kerala, which was said to be championing the efforts at one point in time, but Kerala is not doing as well. But if you look at Kerala started opening up in April only, and people did warn them about early opening, but Kerala opened up too early. It opened up in April only and allowed foreign visitors to come to it. So all Keralites settling across the world were allowed to come to Kerala, and the shops were open and things like that moved in. If you compare to, say, for example, northern part of India, Uttarakhand is still closed. It doesn't allow people to come to Uttarakhand if you don't have an RT-PCR or a vaccination status known. You go to J&K, again the same thing. You have a travel restriction there. Unless and until you have an RT-PCR done or a RAT done, you cannot be allowed entry into J&K still after a year or so. So states which opened up too early, or you can have Maharashtra. You can look at the Maharashtra scenario. Maharashtra did better in the later part than, say, for example, Kerala, because Maharashtra continued to have restrictions for a longer period of time. So maybe critical travel was the key. So wherein the travel did not cross that critical threshold of the pandemic, it was safe for those places. Wherein the travel increased that critical threshold, the countries had a problem or the states had a problem.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. One last personal question to Dr. Arvind. So, Dr. Arvind, I didn't post, I was getting my immunization injection and I didn't post the selfie on Facebook. Will I still develop antibodies? I didn't post the Facebook photo.
You will develop antibodies.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So I want to thank the panel, Dr. Raman personally, for agreeing to be on this particular webinar, and all of you, sir. And it was a great webinar. On behalf of Practo, I want to thank you all. And we hope to keep developing such webinar and academic activities going further in the future. So thank you all, everybody, once again. And we'll end this webinar right now over here. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.